Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Dakbo Adigboye, and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in Europe, where Yulia Navalny, the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, says she would press on with her husband's fight for free Russia, and also called on supporters to battle President Vladimir Putin with greater fury than ever. Navalny's death robs Russia's disparate opposition of its most charismatic and courageous leaders. Putin prepares for an election that will keep him in power until at least 2030. In a 9-minute video message laced with rage, 47-year-old Navalny said that Putin killed her husband, and his doing so had robbed her 2 children of a father. She said the only answer to such a crime was to continue her late husband's fight for a free and prosperous Russia. Now, during an official visit to Warsaw, Swedish Prime Minister also offers his condolences to the family of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny and proposes a new and separate sanction regime for Russia in response to human rights violations. Alexei Navalny's widow, Yulia, had earlier on Monday accused President Vladimir Putin of killing her husband and vowed to continue his work 3 days after he died in a Russian Arctic prison. A video address came as the Kremlin said an investigation into his death was ongoing and his mother was denied access to his body for a 3rd day.
Привет, это Юлия Навальная. Сегодня в первый раз на этом канале я хочу обратиться к вам. Меня не должно было быть на этом месте. Я не должна была записывать это видео. На моем месте должен быть другой человек. Но этого человека убил Владимир Путин. 3 дня назад Владимир Путин убил моего мужа Алексея Навального. Путин убил отца моих детей. Путин отнял самое дорогое, что у меня было, самого близкого и самого любимого человека. Я буду продолжать дело Алексея Навального, продолжать бороться за нашу с вами страну, и я призываю вас встать рядом со мной. Не стыдно сделать мало, стыдно не сделать ничего. Стыдно дать себя запугать.
Let me first begin to convey our condolences to Alexei Navalny's family and to all those people tirelessly advocating for a political change inside Russia. The Russian authorities and President Putin personally bear full responsibility for his death. Russian officials must be held accountable and responsible, and Sweden would propose that EU consider introducing a new separate sanction regime for Russia in response to the violations of
Ukraine has launched an investigation into allegations that Russian forces executed 8 unarmed Ukrainian soldiers after they took control of the city of Avdiivka. Now, the security service of Ukraine, under the guidance of the Donetsk Regional Prosecutor's Office, on Monday opened a pre-trial investigation into the alleged killing of an unarmed prisoner of war in Avdiivka and the village of Vasily. Under the procedural supervision of the Donetsk Regional Prosecutor's Office, a pre-trial investigation has been initiated into the violation of the laws and customs of war combined with premeditated murder. Now, EU foreign ministers meet in Brussels with the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine, as well as the death of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny at the top of the agenda. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen says the European Union on Monday officially launched a mission to help protect international shipping in the Red Sea from attacks by Yemen's Houthis. The European Commission President wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, that Europe will ensure freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, working alongside international partners. The Houthis will control much of war-torn Yemen, have been attacking vital shipping lanes since November in a campaign, they say, in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza amidst the Israel-Hamas war. Now, Ursula von der Leyen announced on Monday her bid for a 2nd term as chief of the European Commission, vowed to defend the bloc from forces aiming to divide it. The 65-year-old German former minister candidacy comes at a time when the bloc is facing strong headwinds from the far right. Russia war against Ukraine is still raging, and also with the specter of Donald Trump's returning to the White House rattling allies. At the helm since 2019, von der Leyen has led the bloc's executive body as the EU traversed an extraordinary period of disruptions, from Brexit to the coronavirus pandemic to Russia's invasion of its pro-EU neighbors. Let's go on a quick break. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. Let's move to the U.S., where 2 police officers and a first responder were shot and killed early Sunday in the U.S. state of Minnesota after answering a call about a domestic dispute in a house with multiple children inside. State officers say the shooter, who has not yet been publicly identified, is dead, and the 7 children ranging in age from 2 to 15 years were all safely secured, declining to provide information on how the shooter died. Tim Walz, Minnesota governor, described the slain policeman incident as quite unfortunate. They were responding to calls which were described as a call of a family in danger, as both aged 27 and a 40-year-old fire department paramedic were shot. Multiple guns were recovered from the property, but police did not say whether they were pistols or more powerful semi-automatic rifles.
This is really a terrible day for the city of Burnsville, all of the residents, the law enforcement and fire communities that are mourning the loss of these public servants that occurred early today. Avenue South, on a report of a domestic situation where a man was reported to be armed and barricaded with family members in the home. We later learned that there were 7 young children in the home, ranging from ages 2 to 15 at the time of this event occurred. When officers got to the scene, the individual was barricaded, and they spent quite a bit of time negotiating with this individual who was barricaded in the home, and additional officers responded at that time. At one point during that barricaded situation, the subject opened fire on the officers in the home. At approximately 8 a.m., the subject was reported to be deceased in the home, and later that morning, those other children and family members were able to escape from the home.
This is a hard day. It's a really hard day for our public safety family. We're hurting. Okay, we're hurting. Today, 3 members of our team made the ultimate sacrifice for this community.
Amidst escalating tensions in the Red Sea, the United States conducted 5 strikes in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen on Sunday. U.S. Central Command said it struck 3 mobile anti-ship cruise missiles, 1 unmanned surface vessel, and 1 unmanned underwater vessel, that's UUV, on Saturday. Now, the strikes were carried out between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. local time. According to the U.S., the Houthi vessels presented an imminent threat to U.S. Navy ships, and these actions will protect freedom of navigation in the region. Notably, this is the first reported use of unmanned underwater vessel by Houthis since the attack began last October, as per U.S. Central Command. And of course, still on the news at this time, the U.S. has controlled it will veto a call for Israel to lay down arms against the people of Palestine in an upcoming vote at the United Nations Security Council. The vote, tabled by Algeria and backed by 22 Arab nations, demands an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and is expected to take place on Tuesday. U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield said in a statement that Washington has been working on a hostage deal for months that would bring at least a 6-week period of calm to the region, which would, from which it could then take the time and steps to build a more enduring peace. Of course, in North America, we understand that thousands of persons have rallied in Mexico's capital protesting against proposed changes to the electoral authority ahead of June's presidential elections. The Mexico City government said some 90,000 persons turned out in the city's Zocalo Square. The rally organizers said the figure was much higher. The opposition accuses President Andrés Manuel López Obrador of trying to weaken the National Electoral Institute, an autonomous, non-partisan body. The president says the INE is biased and corrupt. Now, since his victory in the 2018 presidential polls, the president has been pushing for a reform of the institute, which he says will save taxpayers $150 million a year by drastically reducing the agency's staff.
De que si somos ciudadanos que exigimos, vamos a tener un mejor gobierno. Y hoy lo que pedimos es que no ataquen a nuestras instituciones autónomas, defender nuestra democracia, que el INE y el tribunal tengan independencia, que pues nuestro presidente saque las manos de la elección.
Él quiere enquistarse en el gobierno poniendo a Claudia Sheinbaum y no lo vamos a permitir. Somos millones de mexicanos que estamos en contra de este gobierno. Y lo hacemos, yo en lo especial lo hago por mis hijos, por mis nietos.
Yo creo que clarísimamente ha habido un ataque a las instituciones gubernamentales que regulan estos temas, por ejemplo el INE, ya marchamos una vez por eso y ahorita marchamos justamente para que estas instituciones sigan fuertes.
In Oceania, now dozens of persons have died in a tribal dispute in Papua New Guinea's remote highland areas. A regional police spokesperson told police newsmen that the victims were shot dead during an ambush in the Enga province over the weekend. The highlands areas has long struggled with violence, but these killings are believed to be the worst in years. An influx of illegal firearms has made clashes more deadly and fueled the cycle of violence. Authorities initially said at least 64 persons have died, but later reports said that they had miscounted and revised the toll down to 26. To the Middle East, where Israel is threatened to invade Gaza's Rafah by the start of Ramadan if Hamas does not return the remaining hostages by then. The threat comes despite international pressure to protest Palestinian civilian shelling in the southern city, with prospects for truce talks dimmed. The US states and other governments, as well as the United Nations, had issued increasing urgent appeals to Israel to call off its planned offensive in Rafah. The Israeli government says the city on the Egyptian border is the last remaining stronghold in Gaza of the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Ramadan, the Muslim holiday month, is expected to begin around March 10th.
The world must know, and Hamas leaders must know, if by Ramadan hostages are not home, the fighting will continue everywhere to include Rafah area. We will do so in coordinated manner, facilitating the evacuation of civilians in dialogue with American and Egyptian partners and to minimize the civilian casualties as much as possible.
Joining us on the news at this time to discuss this is Afua Hagen. Now, tell us what you know about the Rafah assault that is to begin in March 10th.
A member of Israel's war cabinet has said that a ground invasion of Rafah will probably begin around Ramadan, and that's expected to start on the 10th of March. Now, that was retired General Benny Gantz. He's part of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet, and he told a press conference of Jewish American leaders that if by Ramadan all hostages are not home, the fighting will continue to the Rafah area. Now, this is the first time that Israel have publicly discussed and laid out a timeline for this ground offensive on Rafah. Now, more than 2.3 million people have sought refuge in this city, a city that's usually home to 250,000 people. Now, Ramadan, that holy month, is traditionally a tense time in the region. Now, these comments come after Benjamin Netanyahu has brushed off calls to stop this military offensive in Gaza, and he's continued to double down and say that they will finish the job. Now, the US, Israel's top ally at the moment, says it's still hoping for a ceasefire and a hostage release agreement, and says that there could be a resolution to this war still. Now, Washington has also said that it will veto another draft of a calls for a UN ceasefire, saying that such measures could jeopardize the opportunity for an enduring resolution of these hostilities, a sustainable one. But Mr. Netanyahu's cabinet said on Sunday that Israel categorically rejects all these international edicts and a permanent agreement with Palestine, and opposes any unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Over the weekend, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pushed back on growing calls from world leaders to avoid this ground operation in Rafah, and said that with doing so would mean losing the war against Hamas. He said those who want to prevent us from operating in Rafah are essentially telling us lose the war. I won't let that happen. He said that in a press conference in Jerusalem. He said we won't capitulate to any pressure at all. Now, Rafah, like I said, this very important city sits on the Gaza-Egypt border, and it's the last remaining stronghold in that enclave. But like I said as well, it's where 2.3 million displaced Palestinians are seeking shelter from the wider fighting across Gaza and across that region. Over 12,000 children are thought to have died in that region. And if this assault on Rafah goes ahead, it's thought many, many more could die, and the humanitarian crisis in that city could be catastrophic.
We'll go on a quick break. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. In Asia, Thai prosecutors will conduct further investigation into whether former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra broke a royal defamation law a day after the billionaire's release on parole in a separate graft case. Now, the former Manchester City owner is one of the most divisive figures in modern Thai history, loved by millions of rural voters for his populist policies, but opposed by the royalist and pro-military establishment. On Sunday, he was released on parole just 6 months into a 8-year sentence for graft and corruption charges, for which he was arrested last August after his dramatic return to the kingdom from 15 years of self-imposed exile.
ได้อนุญาตให้ปล่อยชั่วคราวนะครับคุณทักษิณชินวัตรอดีตนายกรัฐมนตรีโดยมีหลักประกันนะครับและนัดให้มาพบพนักงานอัยการอีกครั้งในวันที่ 10 เมษายน 2567 เวลา 9 นาฬิกาคดีมีประเด็นให้สอบสวนเพิ่มเติมตามหนังสือที่ทางคุณทักษิณชินวัตรอดีตนายกรัฐมนตรีร้องขอความเป็นธรรมอัยการสูงสุดจึงมีคำสั่งให้สอบสวนเพิ่มเติม
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday told Azerbaijan's visiting leader that he wanted Baku to avoid future border flare-ups with Armenia and to pursue a lasting peace. Azerbaijani president arrived in Ankara, Baku's most important military and diplomatic supporter on the global stage, after holding rare talks with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, hosted by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now, the Munich meeting stakes were raised by a deadly clash last week after Azerbaijan-Armenian border that Yerevan said killed 4 Armenian troops. The German Chancellor said Aliyev and Pashinyan had agreed to push for peace and avoid the use of force.
Azerbaycan ile Ermenistan arasında kalıcı barış anlaşmasının imzalanmasının bölgemiz ve dünyada barış, huzur ve istikrar için yeni bir umut kaynağı olacağı şüphesizdir. Bu süreçte Azerbaycan'la birlikte omuz omuza hareket ediyoruz. Bu vesileyle geçtiğimiz günlerde iki ülke sınırında meydana gelen eylemlerin tekrar yaşanmamasını ümit ettiğimiz.
Let's also tell you that Japan and Ukraine have signed around 56 agreements in a range of fields, including post-war recovery. The agreements were signed on Monday during the Japan-Ukraine Conference for Promotion of Economic Growth and Reconstruction in Tokyo. Addressing the conference, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said fighting is still going on in Ukraine and the situation is not easy. Tokyo hosts the one-day conference as the Russia-Ukraine war completes 2 years this month. About 130 officials as well as business representatives from both sides attended the conference. Kishida, who visited Kyiv last year, stressed that promoting economic reconstruction in Ukraine is an investment for the future. And of course, that wraps up the news at this time. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on socials. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422 Star Times, channel 274, Abo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Dakbo at Digboy. Bye for now.